Good afternoon, everybody. Remember, it is Creative Arts Week still, and this week we're going to be starting work on our final pieces. I would really like you to concentrate on your final pieces over this week, especially in the afternoons. We wouldn't expect this work to be finished in 1 hour. It will take quite a few hours for you to complete it. So that is absolutely fine if you find that you do not end up finishing another subject this week in the afternoon because you're concentrating on your artwork. So just a quick reminder that your final piece will need to be submitted by next Monday, which is the 6th of July. That gives us time to put everything together on our creative virtual gallery, which will be on the Thursday, which is the 9th of July. So we're not expecting by any means for your final piece to be finished this afternoon. We're going to get started on it, and like I say, just dip into it throughout the week and take as long as you need and submit it when you are happy with it and you are ready. Alongside that, it would be really fantastic for you to complete a video or a short piece of writing that explains where your inspiration has come from and the feelings that your work is showing. So last week I personally was really inspired by some of the colours and the description and design of these pieces by Carolyn Eardley, and I'd started to work on a design idea for my final piece, remembering that we're not expecting this to be completed all at once. That will not happen, and because it's simply, sometimes you need to take a step back from your artwork. Sometimes you might think you want to change it a little bit, so please don't think about rushing that today. What we're going to have a look at now is some different techniques we could use within our artwork and our final pieces. So we're just going to go through a few techniques so that you can think about how you could maybe apply these techniques into some of your work. Now, the important thing to remember is that these techniques can be used whether or not you are using colouring pencils, felt pens, paints. There are absolutely no limits, and it's really important to remember that we're not wanting to forget all our art skills. Okay, we know that there are different techniques we can use when we're wanting to shade and colour, and that's really important to remember. So let's just have a quick look at how hatching can be used to complete a piece. So I'm just going to remind you, I had a sort of a love heart on my final piece idea, my original idea. I'm just going to sort of replicate that now, something a little bit like that. Now, if I wanted to, I might think about the colours that I could use, but remembering again, it doesn't just have to be one colour. So if I'm hatching to shade this in, remember that we're just sort of lots of little lines, and the deeper that you press on with those lines, the more that colour is going to show. So you could start to think about a little bit of light coming into it and reflecting off it. And all I've done there is little lines, and I could do that with my felt pen as well, in the same way, and those lines could be longer or shorter, and we could mix in another colour as well, remembering that we don't just have to stick to one colour. There, I've got some lovely little lines there to start to complete my heart. So there is, and the lines don't all have to go in the same direction. You might then start to draw some going in another direction, and again add in, mix up. Part of it may be done in felt pen with a little bit of pencil weaved through there as well. We're not just saying that your picture will be just paint or just felt pen. Of course, it's completely up to you. So I'm pressing on quite hard in the centre section here for that depth of colour, and now I'm just going to do a little bit more at the ends. Okay, And that is my heart. I'm just going to now, and you may like to do this, but you don't have to go around the outside. You may just want to outline parts of your work. Sometimes they don't need it, so it might just be that you outline some sections. And again, your outline does not need to be in just one media. You may like to use a couple of media to do that. So I'm just starting to think about hatching as a technique there. Okay, and there my heart is coloured in, shaded using hatching. So it's just a reminder of what hatching looks like. Excellent. So I have, remember from last week, I possibly wanted to have a tree within my artwork somewhere. You may or may not want to do something similar. So I've just sketched a tree here. So remember, just use your pencil lightly. It doesn't matter if you're not completely happy with it. You can always go over it afterwards, or we'll start working into it. I'm going to just have a quick look and reminder of cross hatching now. Now, just because a tree is usually brown, the trunk of the tree, that doesn't mean that you need to do yours brown. Think about your colours. You know, if you were doing it, would you be thinking about the colours that represent your emotions whilst you've been growing through this period? Might be a purple, could be a pink, it might be a yellow. There's no rules with that, is there? So please don't think, oh, because trees are usually brown, I'm going to do mine brown. Doesn't matter at all. You may go for blues and purples, which is what I'm going to do now, just to show you and remind you of the cross hatching technique. Now, remembering again that the light bounces off different surfaces as well, so I'm not necessarily going to be shading in the whole of this tree. And cross hatching, if you can remember from our work in school over the past few years, is lots and lots, very similar to hatching, but rather than just going in one direction, we also go in another direction as well to add that depth. Now that's one way of doing it. You could also do it lots of little crosses put together, and again, the darker that you press on, the more of an impact, and also the closer together that you put the crosses, the darker they become. If you start to spread them out a little bit, then you can clearly see them getting lighter. So I'm going to imagine that there's some light coming in from this direction. So this side of my tree is going to be slightly lighter than the other side. Okay, and you may want to do a little bit of an outline as well. Remember, when we're shading, we're doing the inside of the tree. So I'm just starting to do some little crosses actually where the branches are. You may wish to use this technique for something else on your work. You may have a moon on your work, or you may have a cloud, okay, representing something. It might be a massive clock that's representing the time period, and it may be that you're going to cross hatch in different colours. So I've started to cross hatch. You could, again, mix up your media, so I might put a little bit of felt pen cross hatching on there. It just means it's just slightly more creative than just simply colouring in. We don't want to just be colouring in with our artwork. Remember, we're thinking like artists now, and we know how to be fantastic artists. We've been working hard on our skills over the past few years, and we're going to be continuing to showcase those. You've got your different shades of blue. And again, there's no rules as long as you know why you've chosen to do that particular colour. Now, I might think, oh, well, at the beginning of the tree, there wasn't, you know, there really wasn't much hope, and the beginning of the journey, it's quite bare. But actually then, I might start to add leaves to the tree as the journey continues. So you may find you've got quite a bare, you know, thinking about the ways that we can represent, you know, things starting to grow and the period of time starting to grow. And again, I might just cross hatch into those leaves as well that I'm adding on. So there we go, we've got some nice leaves starting to form on our tree, because these leaves are representing us adapting to the time and starting to absorb everything and starting to grow both within ourselves and the situation. So there's just a couple starting to pop out on the top that I've cross-hatched. So again, it's just an idea, and I might just pop a few bits of cross-hatching here as well. Remember, it could be lots of little crosses, or you can do it in larger sections. But I personally do like the little crosses. I think that they start to sort of, you know, allow you to just, especially with something that's textured like a tree, start to show that texture. Okay, so starting to build into it now. I might pop a couple of colours over the top of each other as well. Just, there we go. There's nice little bits of branches that are popping out, and they're again little crosses, which is absolutely fine. Just showcasing the different techniques that I know. This would look really effective on something that is a little bit more 3D. Okay, and I'm starting to share and think about some larger crosses there that can just start to show my ideas and shading that tree. That's cross hatching then. So for the stippling, I've remembered that technique, and that requires lots of little dots. Now I've just drawn a feather. I was thinking about feathers because whilst we've been out walking and doing lots of mindful thinking on walks, one of the things that I've noticed, particularly as well as lots of different flowers, is lots of bird feathers on the floor as well. Depending on where you do go, but if you've been going to a lake or a reserve at all, or anywhere near water where there've been birds, you may have also seen some feathers, and feathers also symbolise hope and freedom and that flight. I know that you looked at feathers quite a lot last year in year 4 as well, so it might be that you want to include a few feathers in your final piece if that's something that you can think about the representation of. So I'm going to have a look at how we can use some stippling then to shade in this feather, and again, completely up to you colour wise. So I'm just going to have a look. It doesn't have to be a traditional feather colour. I might just go for green for this one actually, personally. So I'm going to start off at the base of the feather. I've just done an outline first, as you can see. It's really hard to apply your technique without an outline, so you sort of want something that you're going to be shading in. And you may just want to sort of, you know, use thick and thin lines for this. So I'm just going to remember that there's different sorts of lines. You could do wavy lines as well. You don't have to. I'm going to make that one a little bit wavier just to sort of show the bumpy journey. It's not been smooth. It's getting a bit smoother now, so I may just smooth it out towards the top. And remember that everywhere you can put in little clues about your period of time. And then lovely little lines. So what I'm going to show you now is how we could add some stippling into this. So some dots. So there we've got some, started to think about shading that in. I may put a little bit of cross hatching on at the bottom where there's a bit denser, and these are all kind of cross hatched anyway, aren't they? Right, so working on stippling then, so I'm just going to, remember you could do small dots, large dots, and the thing about the stippling technique is that the closer together you put the dots, the more defined the area is. So if you do not, you know, if you want it to appear quite light, just like we did with the hatching and the cross hatching, you just spread the dots further apart, so that actually, unless you get really close up, you almost can't tell that they are dots. So from a distance, you may find it difficult to notice that these are dots, because I think that's sometimes what some of the best artists can do, is that the person who's appreciating the art can't actually tell how it's been done unless they get quite close to it, because they've done it in such a good way that it makes it, you know, it doesn't really matter how it's shaded anyway, but it you know, you appreciate it more when you can see all the hard work that's gone into it up close as well sometimes. So remember, these are just tiny, tiny dots, but spread out. And the closer together they are, the more defined the area becomes. So I'm just going to mix in a bit of cross hatching on there as well, not just sticking to one technique. Starting to explore how my little dots, so you can use, you could do this with paints, you could be doing this with watercolours, and starting to add shade, light and shade through my techniques. So I'm just going to start to do that. And you've also, you know, you may do some little lines, some dashes, but also don't forget about your stippling. So Caroline Eardley, the artist that we looked at, or I particularly really liked the work of last week, had got some really vibrant flowers in her work, which quite inspired me. Now I might not want to do the whole flower, I might want to have a flower coming off the edge of the page here, that might be in the corner. The light, part of the light at the end of the tunnel, and the growth is obviously the flower emerging. So I may just want to have, you know, again, it doesn't have to be a full thing, it could be, think about how it can shoot into your page, come off the corners, doesn't have to, everything doesn't, in art, things don't have to be a certain way, as we know. So you don't have to put things in the middle of the page, in the centre, and work around them. You might have things coming off the edge, coming from down from below. There's really no rules at all. So I thought we'd just have a look at the flower in terms of contour shading. As we know, contour shading is great for 3D. And contour shading means that you look at the contours, the lines that are within the object or the drawing that you are shading in, and use those lines and follow those lines with your media. So I'm going to use this goldy bronzy colour, it's called. So I'm just going to have a look at one of these petals here. So you follow, and remember, again, you can press on hard or you can press on lightly, it doesn't matter. I'm going to press on quite hard at the outer rim here, and then I'm going to start loosening off, and you may start to then twirl your pencil around to start to finalize the piece, the contour. So it's about following the line of the shape and then slowly easing off, and you can sometimes also fill in any gaps in the contour with a different colour. I'll just do that with a yellow, and just ease your way out with that colour as well to blend that through. Doesn't just have to be one colour, remember. And with the centre, I'm going to do the same. So I'm just going to have a look, pressing on, remember, following the contour line, the shape of what you are actually shading in. Then relaxing my pencil, and you may even go to a white there. And you could go over that whole thing with another colour, so I might just go over that with a, let's just see, have I got, oh, here we are, orangey. I'm just going to go over those again with that same colour, different colour even. It's not really showing up very well, but it depends again if you press on more or not, and then maybe into that. You could add any bits of colour into it. Remember that we're not just looking for one size fits all. I love when people start to experiment with different colours and thinking about their choices. So we've got a little bit of blue within that as well, not everywhere, just around the contour lines. And I'm going to do a bit more of a goldy one now here, because the growth is coming, so it's kind of like we're getting ahead now. Now things are starting to grow and become independent again. I've done a bit of contour in there. Just press on, remember. That's absolutely perfect. Just get that around and then finish it off, and maybe adapt it by popping another colour into it as well. And we've got a, there we go. The contouring is a little bit harder to do with felt tip pens. It's nicer to do with colours that you can blend as well. So start to share those colours and create your own shades as well. It's not impossible, but it's just a little bit harder to get the actual blending side of it with felt pens or watercolour brush pens. So I mean, I don't know if these are lovely, but they're brush pens and they're watercolour pens, and I can actually blend these, but it's hard still even for me to do a lighter shade. As you know, with felt pens you can kind of struggle to do that sometimes, so something that's not doesn't really work as well though. It's not impossible, but it's just a bit trickier. Okay, so here are a few techniques and different ideas to support you with your art piece. So today you don't have to get started on your art piece. You could just be exploring some techniques and designs that you would like to do. What I'll do is later on in the week is update you with a bit of more of my final piece, because I've been exploring this today. I'm going to start to work on that final piece, but not expecting it to be completed today. So I think it would be really brilliant practice for you just to be thinking about, you know, you could start your final piece, start thinking about your ideas, but remember it is not a rush. We've got until next Monday to do that. So please, please, let's focus on that quality and what it represents, and don't expect your final piece to be finished just like that. Okay, so keep working hard, think about your techniques and the different things you'd like to have within your piece. It may just be one large representation, one object, okay, with lots of things in it, or just on its own. There is no rules, okay. It might have a couple of words on. You may choose not to have any words at all in your work. Really, your ideas are completely personal and individual to you, so there is no way of saying what is right or wrong here, but we would love to see some fantastic techniques used within your work and some really careful sketching. So I'd love to see some updates on how you're getting on today, but remember there is no pressure to be finishing your piece today. And later on this week I will let you know when I will update another video with how I'm starting work on my final piece.